We just heard the beautiful poem, Still I Rise by Maya Angelou, and the song I Rise Up by Andra Day. So as I was preparing this talk and looking at music, I thought of this song right away. It's so perfect for this topic. So I went to YouTube and I found a very interesting story about a youth choir singing this song. Maybe you saw it too. It was the Cardinal Shehan school choir, and they were just practicing. But their choir director, Kenyatta Hardison, decided to video the students so she could show their parents how much progress they were making. Well, the video went viral, and it was picked up by major news outlets. And I saw one version where the choir, the school choir, performed the song with the writer-composer on The View. And she was nominated for a Daytime Emmy for that particular show. So how great is that? It fits with our monthly theme, which is reaching higher, and the weekly talk, and Still I Rise. And this weekly talk was inspired and an idea of Rochelle McQuarrie, who is one of our practitioners out of the Las Vegas area. So I just want to tell you, in August, the summertime vacation time, we spend time resting, rejuvenating, and just readying ourselves for the next part of the journey. And so September, a show. So how great is that? It fits with our monthly theme, which is reaching higher, and the weekly talk, and Still I Rise. And this weekly talk was inspired and an idea of Rochelle McQuarrie, who is one of our practitioners out of the Las Vegas area. So I just want to tell you, in August, the summertime vacation time, we spend time resting, rejuvenating, and just readying ourselves for the next part of the journey. And so in September, we return to our lives. We go back to school. In France, I would see these big advertising posters, and they were advertising rentrée sales, which is re-entry. So we would say back to school, they say rentrée. So this month, we are re-entering, we're beginning again, we are reaching higher toward a greater understanding of ourselves and our place in the universe. We've advanced a grade in the school of life, and we're pushing past those comfort zones and using our understanding in innovative ways to make us move forward. But we're still including that wisdom and experiences that we've gained along the way. And still we rise. Ernest Holmes tells us there is divine urge within everyone to know more, to be more, to express more. And so, in despite of the discomfort and obstacles, we persevere and we rise. And perhaps we rise not in spite of our challenges, but because of them. Michael Beckwith tells us the spirit within us is so powerful that it can rise even after the most devastating of circumstances. And there is that within us that continues to call us forward and upward on our journey of awakening. And it calls us to a greater understanding of ourselves, our relationship with the capital S self, and our role and purpose in society. So this year we are studying the evolutionary vision and the timeless wisdom of science of mind. And so for evolutionary vision, we have our global vision. And in there it states, we envision humanity awakening to its spiritual magnificence and discovering the creative power of thought, a world where every person discovers his or her own personal power and ability to create an individual life that works within a world that works for everyone. So that is our evolutionary vision. And timeless wisdom, we go back to our what we believe statement. We believe in the incarnation of spirit in humankind, and that all people are incarnations of the one spirit. We believe the kingdom of heaven is within us, and that we experience this kingdom to the degree that we become conscious of it. So we're surrounded by this creative mind, which received that direct impress of our thought and acts on it. And so probably the greatest single determining factor of our experience in living is what we think. Whether it be health, supply, happiness, success, harmonious relationships, or any aspect of our lives, in and behind it is the creative cause, that creative pattern of our thought. We believe the ultimate goal of life to be complete emancipation from all discord of every nature, and that this goal is sure to be attained by all. That is in the What We Believe statement, first documented by Ernest Holmes. See, freedom from what we do not want and our emergence into a life that is more complete with all those things, which contribute to the welfare, happiness of ourselves and of others, would depend on to what extent we're able to consistently control, guide, and direct our thinking. In Science of Mind, we know this. We know that there's a power for good, which is responding to me and bringing into my experience everything necessary for my unfoldment. And this power for good uses every part of my human experience, the joyous and the challenging, the pleasure and the pain. It uses all of this to guide me into a deeper awareness and knowingness of itself as me. See, in God, nothing is wasted. All of my life experiences are used by the power of good, enabling me to help others and to bless the world. That is a direct quote from the Science of Mind textbook. And Ernest Holmes writes, there is an inner urge in our own minds to grow, to expand, to break down the barriers of previous limitations. And to ever widen our experience. This persistent urge is a divine influence, an irresistible force, and constitutes the greatest impulse in human experience. In Maya Angelou's classic poem, Still I Rise, which Janice read, it's the namesake for this week's theme. Although it was written in response to a specific cultural experience, like all great poetry, it articulates universal truth. This refrain of "Still I rise" is the heartbeat of truth, proclaiming that there is within each of us that which is unstoppable, inexhaustible, inextinguishable, unchangeable. And by whatever name we call it, God, spirit, divine intelligence, that in which we live, we move, we have our being, that which rises in us as us can never be oppressed. Sometimes like a tender sprig of green pushing through the concrete sidewalk, it rises, life rises as us, always. Ernest Holmes tells us that there is an energy in thought, not because we wish it to be so, but because it is so. That is the way it is. Definite and specific thinking draws this energy through our conscious desires and makes manifest these desires at the level of our comprehension of good. That's in his book, Living Without Fear. Emma Curtis Hopkins declares that our good is our God. And she goes on to tell us we should name our good and repeat it daily. There is a good for me and I ought to have it. Let's try this. Think about something it is in your life that you want to affirm. And what we're going to do is we're going to say, there is a good for me and I ought to have it. And my good is, and then you say whatever your good is. Now, you all be on mute, and I'm going to leave mine blank so y'all can hear yourselves. And we're going to do this a few times. So let's begin. There is good for me, and I ought to have it. My good is. There is good for me, and I ought to have it. My good is my. There is good for me, and I ought to have it. My good is my. There is good for me, and I ought to have it. My good is my. One more time. There is good for me, and I ought to have it. My good is my. You see, what happens is when we push past that comfort zone, sometimes we're faced with challenges. Sometimes the first thing that comes in with that is like, no, for this reason or that reason or the other reason. And, life can feel uncertain, and sometimes our footing is a little unstable. And for some of us, even getting out of bed in the morning is an effort. And maybe there hasn't been major trauma in our life, but everydayness of living with a health crisis, in this case, one called COVID-19, the threat, that can weigh a person down. And living in this blah state may be linked to languishing. And while languishing is not a formal diagnosis, it's a valid and common feeling, particularly during this COVID-19 pandemic. So if you're not happy and you're not sad, but it's kind of blah, you may be languishing. So what do we do then? We have to stay in the moment. We have to be mindful. Reverend Shehan Parker Dennison writes this. He says, I feel like I'm a constant hunt for hope these days. I have to be. Every time I look at my phone or open my laptop, I'm overwhelmed by stories of violence, disrespect for life, greed, selfishness. And when I listen to my friends or loved ones, it feels like everyone's dispirited and disheartened. And that's dangerous. And the danger of hopelessness is a double danger. First, it makes us feel like it's useless to take action. And it fools us into believing that there's nothing that we can do or that our efforts won't make a difference. And the other danger is that we can lose each other. See, in times of hopelessness, I don't know about you, but I tend to retreat. And it's easy to be scared of everything and everyone. And it's easier to start believing that, well, your neighbor's the problem and hoarding is a better strategy. And the problem is when the community starts to break down, we lose an important source of hope, and that is each other. Reverend Shehan continues, the message of hope that still blazes bright for me in these hard times is that I am not alone. When I need hope, I find it on the faces of my people. I find it in their hearts. And when we find each other again and stop hiding out, thinking that we're the only one, when we come together in community to sing, to bless one another, to mourn, to strategize, all we need is hope. And for that, we have each other. This was certainly revealed to me this week as we had a ministers gathering. And although we spent 3 days and just a few hours each day with each other on Zoom, it was totally renewing, reinvigorating, re-energizing, because we came together as community. We talked with each other. And so we leaned into that understanding that we can help each other and find our footing and new handholds for this part of our evolutionary journey where we don't even know where we're going. See, in New Thought, we tend to avoid pain and suffering via something that's called spiritual bypass. We're familiar with a bypass of roads, but a spiritual bypass is a temporary and unsatisfying fix. We kind of bypass the lesson. And we know when that happens that we come back to it eventually, and maybe in another form. So, what would it be like if instead of bypassing this pain or challenge, what if we learned the process of listening to hear what that has to teach us? What if we retrained the idea of challenge or discomfort as an expression of spirit, that divine discontent, as it will? What if that was a holy portal that leads us to the center of our own unique power and purpose? See, that seed of perfection is hidden within. That is also a direct quote from the Science of Mind textbook, page 38. So a seed, unless it falls to earth and is buried, it's a seed. Maybe it's food for the birds. But by going down beneath the ground, it gives rise to new life and bears fruit. So part of the magic is in the seed, which is alive, full of DNA and stored up nutrients that help it grow. But another part of that is in the soil. And soil, made up of old twigs and leaves and little creatures that have composted and decayed to make a bed where that seed can lie quietly and take root. See, it takes light and warmth and clarity of the sun, plus the cool, damp dimness underneath the earth for that seed to sprout. We could say it takes the wonder of life, and it also takes the wonder of death. And people are like that seed. Sometimes we have to lose ourselves to find ourselves. Sometimes we have to make an ending in order to find a new beginning. So, research suggests that mindfulness-based approaches may be the most effective way to combat emotions such as languishing. And mindfulness is that state of moment-to-moment awareness where experiences thoughts and things without judgment. And that helps feel less stressed and more mentally clear. And in turn, then when I'm in that mindful state, I can develop coping strategies. So I ask you, is there a part of you that needs to be put to rest? Maybe a grudge, perhaps, you need to bury. An emotion or a memory that you need to plow beneath the soil. A piece of identity or self-image that you need to drop or scatter to the wind. Oh, a fear that you're carrying. Is there a door you need to close so that another passage can be opened? See, if you're wise like the seed, you won't be afraid of the dark. You'll know that it's the place where transformation takes place. And if you're wise like the autumn leaf or the bloom that's faded, you won't be afraid to fall when your time comes. You'll know that that's the gateway to a new and different life. In the Essential Earnest Tomes, it's written, take the heat out from under old hurts, and what's left is light. So we know there's a divine intelligence, a creative power behind all things that operates in, through, and as us most perfectly. Nothing is wasted. All is used for good. And so we can face life's joys and challenges, knowing that all of our experiences are used by Spirit in service to our greater unfoldment. So that's which was most devastating, produced the texture and uniqueness in that work of art that is us. That which felt unendurable blasted away the small self, giving away to the greater. And that which was unbearable ushers forth the light so that we can shine. In her song, I Rise Up, Andrew Day sings about rising up every day to keep working past our obstacles. And even though our challenges seem insurmountable, we keep going every day. We overcome them. And she told the story. She said, my music and my personal life were both stagnating at the time. And a friend had been diagnosed with cancer. Rise Up started as sort of a prayer. And I thought about what I needed to hear to be able to get back on my feet. And most of the song came streaming out of the first freestyle recording. She said, honestly, there's lines in there I'd normally find cliche, but sometimes a good cliche is exactly what you need in a moment of hopelessness. And we know how this song has affected people. In the comments, Neil says, I'm a nurse working 16-hour shifts, 6 days a week. I needed to hear this song. I cry every night after my shift. I'm scared. I pray my way to and from work. This song helps. Sherry says, 40 years, I rise up every day and take care of my disabled husband. He loves me and I him. Blessings to all who rise up every day. Jessica says, I personally feel like this song should become an international anthem considering our fight against coronavirus. Sarah says, my husband and I were driving home Christmas Eve and our 3 daughters were singing this in the back. And I couldn't help but cry because it was so inspiring. He just looked at me like, our girls are going to be just fine in this crazy world. And so this is how we make a difference, by doing what we have come here to do, by being who we've come here to be. Well, what's that? You say, well, I can't tell you. I can't tell you what you've come here to be. I can only tell you that you're the only one that knows what you came here to do, who knows what you came here to be, and no one else can tell you. And when you find what it is, you might not even know it, because we don't know how, what, or when we say something, how that affects anyone else. What I do know is that you are well and wondrously made by the divine intelligence and creativity that's back of everything. And despite any appearance or experience of obstacles and adversity, the way of life is always rising, expanding, evolving. Every part of the journey is useful and necessary for that which spirit wants to express. Nothing is wasted. All is good. And as you rise up in a life that works, spirit uses you to help others rise. And that is how we create a world that works for all. So let us take that thought into our treatment this morning. And just knowing the power and presence behind all that is, knowing that creative energy moving in and through and as each person, knowing that no matter what it is we're going through, we are right there in spirit, as spirit. That's all there is. And so as I speak this word, I know that I am connected in that one mind as that divine spirit. I know that each person in the sound of my voice is connected in that one mind, in that eternal life. And so knowing this connection, I speak this word with confidence as I allow this divine to unfold in perfect right ways. And so I know the truth about love. I know that there are loving relationships and that these loving relationships are perfect, whole, and complete. And I know that each person is that love. Each person is breathing in love. Each person is exhaling love. And so I say with confidence, love is. And love is what each person is, everywhere present, all of the time. And so I speak my word for abundance, for prosperity, knowing that there is more than enough on this planet, more than enough in this universe to satisfy all of the needs and desires And that as we share among each other and share our greater ideas and our wealth of understanding, that this comes into a beautiful equality where everybody has enough, where everybody has that experience of enoughness. And I speak my word also for health. I know that there's a divine pattern for this human body that each one of us occupies. And I know that that pattern is perfect health. And so as I come into alignment with that perfect health, it is manifested, outpictured in each and every cell. That divine intelligence in each and every cell knows exactly what to do and how to do it for the perfection of the physical body. And I know too, also the truth of creative energy, that there is divine creative energy filling each and every person. And that this creative energy expresses itself in a myriad of ways. It expresses itself in art. It expresses itself in music. It expresses itself in the factory. It expresses itself in engineering. It expresses itself in the roads that we drive on, the cars that we drive. It expresses itself in all things. And so each person has that divine creative energy and is free to express it in perfect right ways, in ways that make this world a better place for all of us. And so knowing the truth without a shadow of a doubt about love, about abundance, about that health, about creative energy, I just give thanks. This is a most miraculous world. And in my overflowing gratitude, I just surrender. I let it be. I know that it's perfect, whole, and complete, just as it is, and just as it is not. And so I release this word into the law that has already said yes. And I invite you to join me in affirming this by saying together, and so it is.